Well, good morning, everybody. Today we hit week 10 of our series, Life Hacks, our summer series, as we march through the first 9 chapters of the book of Proverbs. So I'm going to tell you a story today as I walk through this passage. And really, I went back and forth a lot this week on whether I was going to tell this story. I've not told this story to very many people at all because it's a little embarrassing. But it's got all the marks of a great story. Me alone in a foreign city, bars, scam artists, prostitutes, the Russian mafia. I mean, it's just too good. It fits this passage too well. I have to share it. Even if it makes me look a little dumb. Okay? So we're going to jump right into this. Today we hit Proverbs chapter 7. And this is the third passage in a row that deals with the issue of adultery and sexual sin. So as we're listening to this dad give lessons in wisdom to his son, he keeps coming back to the same theme. So apparently this is something he viewed as a serious threat, something that he thought was very important. So let's just jump right in, because like I say, I need to tell this story too. So grab your outline if you would, and we will start with part 1 I've called A Call to Listen. This is Proverbs 7, verse 1. My son, Father says, keep my words and store up my commands within you. Keep my commands and you will live. Guard my teachings as the apple of your eye. So as we expect by now in week 10, this starts with a call to listen. That says you need to listen to me. Listen to me. It says guard this teaching like the apple of your eye. Kids, does your eye have an apple? What's the apple of your eye? You know what that actually is? This is actually a phrase for your pupil. The teeny little black dot in the middle of your eye. Now, is that an important part of your body? Yeah? Yesterday, we were working on our sound, and I was looking up some tongue glue or something. I had a little splinter fall in my eye. I'll tell you what, life stopped for about 10 minutes for me because there was something in my eye, splintery, right? So what do we do with the apple of our eye? We guard it, we protect it. Dad says this is how you are to guard this teaching. In other words, you're supposed to preserve it, watch over it, keep it, put it in practice. Verse 3, bind them on your fingers, these commands. Write them on the tablet of your heart. In other words, don't just read it, listen, forget about it. Memorize it. Latch this teaching onto you. 4, say to wisdom, you are my sister. And to insight, you are my relative. Again, the personification of wisdom. Wisdom personified as a woman. Could be a sister here, family relationships. However, this term sister is also used, we see in the Bible, in that culture, in marriage to refer to your beloved. So you might remember this out of Song of Solomon. The guy calls his wife or girlfriend or whatever she is, my sister. In Egyptian usage at this time, sister was a term of endearment in a relationship between a husband and wife. So either way, wisdom is either here to be a family member or even romantically as a spouse, perhaps. Either way, close, loyal, committed relationship to wisdom. Verse 5, these commands will keep you from the adulterous woman, from the wayward woman with her seductive words. So wisdom, these teachings, this insight, if we stick to it, will preserve us from an adulterous woman or an adulterous man, or symbolically, I think we could say, any kind of sexual sin. All right, so let me start telling my story. So 3 years ago, I went on the first of 2 3-week trips to Athens in Greece with a team, and we were digitizing ancient New Testament manuscripts at the National Library in Athens. So we were there with the team, and we were working these copy stands with these fancy cameras, these fancy copy stands. We'd work all day long, taking high-quality digital pictures of ancient manuscripts of the New Testament. 800, 600, 1,000 years old maybe. So it's awesome. So we do that all day long, and in the evenings and the weekends, we would have the opportunity to go around and see the sites. And, we'd go off the weekend for a trip here, a trip there, something like this. So when I was in Athens on this first trip, I kind of fell victim to a scam. And this scam is kind of a well-known scam in Athens. You can read about it online. Tons of people fall for it. Now, what would have protected me from this whole debacle? Instructions. Okay? Warning, right? In fact, you can go to the U.S. Embassy website about visiting Greece, and they'll actually talk about this kind of scam that gets run there. So, kids, raise your hand. Young people, listen. You have people in your life that try to give you wisdom and teaching and instruction, like parents, teachers, me, right? Because as we go through life, we learn from experience. A lot of those experiences are painful, right? You ever fall off a bike and break something, you learn not to do that again, right? So kids, you have a choice in your life. You can listen to people that are trying to teach you what they have learned from their experience, and you can take that instruction and put it into practice, or you can make all the same mistakes yourself and learn by experience. So it is your choice. But I suggest that you listen to wisdom and instruction from people that have been there and done that. Okay? All right, so here's how my day started. It was a Saturday. Other weekends we gone on trips together, like to Corinth or monasteries or something like this. For whatever reason, on this Saturday, we were on our own. So I said, well, I want to go to the beach. So I'm just going to strike off by myself and go to the beach. Now, I didn't think that would be a problem. Okay? I sort of fancied myself as a savvy world traveler. I mean, we lived in Asia for 2 years when I was a teenager. Been around the world a couple times, lots of different countries. I'm like, yeah, this should be no problem. And in fact, it really shouldn't have been. So I took the subway to the end of the line. I got in this sort of metro thing, rode this down to the coast, all the way to the end, and I got off at this sort of beach club place where you pay to get in, and you get your own seat, and whatever, you can swim and enjoy all day there. So fair enough. Everything goes fine, right? So I spend the day there. It's time to come home. So I get back on the metro and ride back into downtown Athens. Now here's when the first curveball occurs. Something went wrong with the train. And so instead of stopping at the final destination we were supposed to, it dumped us out a couple stops short. Okay, no big deal. I'm just going to have to walk back to the hotel from here. Not a problem, right? Well, the part 2 on your outline. Wrong place, the wrong time. Verse 6. Now remember the dad's telling this teaching, right? And now he's going to give a story of something he saw. Maybe literally, maybe he's just making it up like a parable. We don't know. Verse 6. At the window of my house, I looked down through the lattice. Not lettuce, lattice. This is like a grid of wood or something over a window. I saw among the simple, I noticed among the young men, a youth who had no sense. So this dad is going to paint a story of what it means to fall victim to adultery, sexual sin. He's going to tell a story. And unfortunately, this story looks a lot like mine, which is what made me think of this today. Notice it says he looks down from the window. So ancient Israelite houses were typically 2 stories. Downstairs was business, where you do your shop work or some things where you keep your animals, your food storage. And then there'd be an upstairs where you'd actually sleep and live. And so there'd be no windows on the bottom level for security. Windows would be on the top. So notice he says, I look down from my window, because he'd be up on the second story, looks down the street of this little village, and he sees this young man, someone who is simple, someone with no sense. So remember, Proverbs operates with 3 categories of people, okay? Over here is the righteous person. This is the wise person. The person who listens to the teachings of Proverbs is wise and righteous. Okay, category 1. Way over here, the opposite of that is the fool. The fool is someone that does not follow God's wisdom, who lives unrighteously. Okay, so good category, bad category. But there's a third category. In the middle of the Proverbs, we'll talk about the naive, the gullible, the simple. These are people, probably young people, kids, teens, who have not yet made a firm commitment either to wisdom or going down the road of foolishness. And so Proverbs is written in part to this category in the middle to try to convince them to pursue wisdom. Proverbs doesn't pay attention to the fool. Proverbs says they're beyond hope. But to the gullible, to the simple, the young, this is what it's written for, to pursue wisdom. So the father says, look, I looked out there and I saw someone in this category. Okay, the simple, the naive, the young boy, probably a teenager, adolescent. Verse 8. He was going down the street near her corner, walking along in the direction of her house, at twilight as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in. Whose house? Jump back to verse 5. It said what? These teachings will protect you from the adulterous woman. Okay? A wayward woman with her seductive words. So he's headed down towards her house, her part of town. Is that good news or bad news? That's bad news. What time of day is he going there? Evening. What time of day was I getting off that train? It was getting dark. Let's see here. Now notice, this young man, is he going out looking for her? We don't get that sense. No, he's just going for a walk. He's not setting out to find her. Nonetheless, she is going to find him. And so while some people do make the blatant decision, you know what, if you're married, make the blatant decision, yeah, I want to go out and commit adultery and blow up my marriage. And some people do make that like very black and white decision. But I bet you most of the time that's not how it works. Most of the time, it's much smaller decisions. It's much less deliberate choice. We kind of fall backwards into these things sometimes. So I think part of us avoiding sexual sin like this is taking wise precautions, knowing ourselves, knowing our life situation, and doing our best to not get caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. We know those people in our lives who are a threat to us. We know certain times in our life when we might be vulnerable. Well, we got to guard against this sort of thing. We don't want to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time because, anything can happen. All right, back to my story. So this train dumps me out short of my destination. It's evening, sun's going down, it's dark. Not a problem, though. I'm confident. I generally know where I am. It's not going to be a problem. I'm feeling confident, fine, and relaxed. So I actually sit down on the sidewalk. I'm taking my time. I'm in no hurry. I sit down on the sidewalk, and I pull out my map. I'm like, all right, I'm here. We're going to go this way. Okay, so now unbeknownst to me, this is like one of the seediest, nastiest neighborhoods, like red light district part of Athens, okay? And here I am sitting on the ground studying this map. And to make matters worse, I am wearing this hat. Okay? This is my favorite hat. I've been wearing this hat for over 20 years. This hat is many things. It is not so. Okay? There are a few places in the world where this hat fits in. Alright? So here I am, by myself, sitting on the sidewalk, reading a map, wearing this hat. Okay? I might as well have a blinking neon sign above my head that says, "Easy Prey." Okay? So here I am. And this guy comes up to me. This old guy. This jovial fellow. 70-some years old. "Where are you from?" he says. "I'm from America." "Oh, I love Americans." Of course he does. And he starts talking to me. He's this cheerful, jolly, sort of grandfatherly figure. "Where are you from? How long you staying here? What are you doing?" And he like casually drops like he's very lonely. He's like, "Yes, maybe I go home. Maybe I kill myself." Like, this is his life. So I immediately switch into like pastor mode. I'm like, "Hey, it's not that bad. You know what? It's okay." Right? So whatever, we keep talking. And he's like, "You like moussaka?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like moussaka." Moussaka is a Greek dish. It's like sort of a Greek lasagna, we might say. He's like, "You must come to my friend's restaurant. Right there. The best moussaka." Now I look across the street. Yeah, there's a restaurant there. It's dinner time. I'm hungry. This guy's nice. I gotta try to stop him from killing himself. So I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll go have some moussaka. So I go across the street, and we sit down in this restaurant. Here's a picture of my friend sitting across the table from me, and we have a nice meal. So he doesn't eat anything. He just leaves me a bill for his drink. It's all right. Probably water. So he takes off. Whatever. So this is, mistake number one. Going with this guy to get moussaka. But again, it's kind of a trustworthy fellow. If it was a young, sleazy man, I wouldn't have gone with him. If it was some kind of attractive woman, I wouldn't have gone with her. But this grandpa, of course. And there's a restaurant across the street. And I'm hungry, it's dinner time. I was not counting on entire businesses set up running this game. So in there, it's only me, my friend, and the two people who work there. So we have this nice meal, whatever. While we're eating, another guy comes in and sits on the table over here. And then pretty soon my friend leaves. Now this is the handoff. My friend, the first guy's name is George. And so he's a very trustworthy fellow. He sets the hook out here. Then you bring him into the restaurant, and so the Mark has sort of a good experience. And now it's the handoff to this other guy. So this other guy's sitting over here, so we strike up a conversation. I fall for this hook, line, and sinker. We finish our meal together. This guy's instantly my best friend. He tells me his name is Francisco, not DiCaprio, he qualifies, which I don't understand at all. But that's what he said. And he's from Italy. He's got a villa there. I'm invited to go and stay with him at his villa. He tells me about his girlfriend and his dog. I mean, he's instantly best friend, So we finish our meal, and my friend Francisco says, "I know a good bar. You come with me. We drink ouzo." Mistake number two. Mistake number two, okay? Go a stranger to sketchy bar in Greece to drink ouzo. Now, actually, that's mistake number three, because ouzo is terrible. Ouzo is like the traditional Greek liquor, okay? It's like black licorice, like very strong black. So it's like black licorice wrapped around someone's fist, okay? It's awful, right? tried it. I'm trying to like it. I want the Greek experience. Now, why shouldn't I go with this random stranger to some bar to drink ouzo, okay? Now, see, our church actually has a no drinking policy for pastors and elders, but I wasn't here yet. So that would have protected me from all this, okay? Actually, it wouldn't have. I would have gone anyway and just got a Coke. So actually, it wouldn't have protected me. So off we go. Now, the hilarious thing is we're walking to this next location. My friend Francisco keeps hitting the same theme. Like, he keeps coming back to the same topic of conversation. And that topic is the importance of living for today. You've got to make the most of every opportunity. You've got to live for today. Someday we die. Every day we must live life to the full. And I'm like cautiously agreeing, but like in evangelism mode, like, well, yes, but we need to live for God, right? So we go walking along, and sure enough, we make our way to this bar. Now, at one hand, this seems super sketchy, but on the other hand, like, no, this is an actual establishment. There's an actual business right here. It looks like all the other restaurants, all the other bars, it's right here. Why wouldn't this be a problem? So we go in here into this bar, and coincidentally, it strikes me as a little odd. In this bar, there's only me, my friend, and two startlingly attractive Russian women behind the counter. Well, that's a little odd. We sit down, and we order some ouzo and orange juice, which at least makes it drinkable. Part 3, encounter and proposition. Verse 10. So this young man is walking through this village, and this happens. Verse 10. Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She's unruly and defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner she lurks. She took hold of him and kissed him, and with a brazen face she said, all right, so notice, this boy's in the wrong place at the wrong time. He goes by her house, and out comes this woman. Says she's dressed like a prostitute. Now, we don't really know what that means in that culture. We're not sure what distinctive dress marked a prostitute in those days. There's some evidence that it would have focused on a veil, that would have hidden her identity, but would have at the same time flagged her for her profession, right? So this woman comes out and meets him and kisses him, very provocative, needless to say. So, back to me, my story. We're sitting down, and these two women come around the corner, come up to us, and they say, can we drink with you? Okay, mistake number 4. Now, this is so outside my experience. I'm like rattled by this, and my mom did teach me to be nice to women. Okay? So I was like, yes? No, I shouldn't have said that. So these two sit down, and remember, this is all part of the scam. This is calculated, all right? Remember, my friend is part of the scam. And so they've got it pretty shrewdly put together. So there's two women, right? One is clearly more attractive than the other one. The less attractive one, is dressed just like normal clothes, like shorts and a t-shirt. And of course, she sits down next to the other guy, my friend. And of course, the other woman, the more attractive one, she is totally dressed like a prostitute, okay? Tight dress, short skirt. And of course, she sits down next to me and starts giving me attention, right? And even my friend, he leans forward and is like, oh, she likes you, you're lucky. I'm like, all right. So again, yeah, mistakes. Mistakes were made, clearly. Look back at verse 10. Then out came a woman to meet him dressed like a prostitute with crafty intent. So just like she was strategic, they've got this whole scam running really good here. And of course, that is calculated to make the mark feel real special. Like, whoa, I'm lucky. This woman's interested in me, right? I'm luckier than my friend over here. Look at verse 14. Dad reports the speech of this woman now. Here's somebody's smooth speech. She says, today I fulfilled my vows, and I have food from my fellowship offering at home. So here this adulterous woman is trying to make herself actually look like a respectable member of society. One or two possibilities here. Food from the fellowship offering. She could be presenting herself as a faithful Israelite woman. You make a fellowship offering, you take a sacrifice to the temple, you devote this to the Lord, like the liver and the fat burned on the altar, and then basically you take the rest and you get to eat it with your family or whatever. So it's like a holy barbecue. And this showed communion and fellowship with God, with Yahweh. So she could be saying that. Alternatively, she could be a pagan, and she's talking here about a fellowship offering in the midst of pagan worship, of a fertility cult. And if that's what's going on, this could be an invitation to join her in the house for the ritual sex that would accompany fertility worship like this. So either way, whether Israelite or pagan, she's like, hey, I'm a respectable member of society. Come, I have food from my fellowship offering at home. Okay, so my story. as I'm talking to the girl assigned to me, she's clearly very smart. Her English is very good. And she tells me, I don't quite remember what she said. She said her training and career was. I want to say she said she was a linguist or something like that. That wasn't quite it. Ethno-linguist or whatever. But it was like a surprising, like, wow, really? Yeah, I don't think it was true, okay? I don't think it was true. Though it might have been. You never know. But I think this was part of it. It was to make her come across as like this really respected member of society. Wow, this beautiful woman is a very smart ethno-linguist. And she's interested in me. Wow, that is pretty impressive. And the goal here is to get you to keep buying drinks. Oh, we'll get back to that in a minute. Verse 15. The woman says to this boy, so I came out to meet you. I looked for you and found you. Now, is that true? Is she looking for this boy in particular? Probably not. She's just after him because he's vulnerable and easy. He just happened to be there, and he happened to be naive and gullible. But she lays it on pretty thick to you. I came out to meet you. I looked for you and found you. So in my story, this woman assigned to me starts laying it on thick. She's like, ooh, you are so fit. You must play a lot of sports. Now, this has never happened. I know I'm not sounding very seductive. I'm not trying very hard. This has never happened to me before. This is outside my experience. Like, I've never had a beautiful woman come up to me on the street and be like, wow, you're so fit. You must play a lot of sports. Now, what might happen is like a grandmotherly woman come up to me and be like, excuse me, dear, you're so pale. I mean, that might happen. But this, I'm like, yeah, this is ridiculous. And to make it even more ridiculous, mind you, I'm still wearing this hat. Or maybe I have it on my knee. And she starts saying, that hat is so attractive. Now, this hat is many things, again. Attractive is not one of them, okay? I mean, I have no illusions. I'm firmly aware of how ridiculous this hat looks. So I'm like, yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous. So it is completely clear to me where I am and what this is. So clearly this is a brothel, right? She's right, and this can go as far as I want it to, yes? Verse 16, this woman keeps laying it on to her boy. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. Although these would have been red, of course. Verse 17, I perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. That's super exotic, super expensive in the ancient world. If you look at Song of Solomon 4:14, those three spices are used to describe the sexuality of the girl. Song of Solomon. So this is like super alluring, super over the top, exotic, erotic, I suppose. Verse 18, she says to him, come, let's drink deeply of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. The husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. So is she really a prostitute? Well, she's not. She has a husband. And she's like, don't be afraid, he's not going to catch us. So she's just dressed like this. So notice, this is just a one-night stand. Is she interested in divorcing her husband and marrying him? No. This is just what it is. Verse 4, trap sprung. I'm sorry, part 4, trap sprung. Verse 21. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her, like an ox to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose. Okay, so thankfully this is where my story diverges from the story of Proverbs. Because in the story, he falls for this hook, line, and sinker and goes all the way, right? Thankfully not me. Like the moment these girls come over, I'm like, okay, this is over. I need to get out of here. I know precisely what this is. I didn't even finish my ouzo. I'm like, nope, I'm sorry, I'm done, time to go, I need my bill. And this girl's like, oh, but would you buy me another drink? Okay, I didn't realize I bought her the first drink. But that was news to me. But I'm like, no, I've got to go. She's like, oh, please, it'll make me so happy if you buy another drink. I'm like, no, sorry, gotta go. Got these Bibles we're taking pictures of. What she thought was very impressive. Okay, so they finally bring me the bill. And this is all part of the scam. See, this can go one of two ways. So you get the bill, and they wanted to charge 10 euro for this drink that I had, and 30 euro for the little glass of champagne that the girl was drinking. And see, this is what happens. So they get a guy in there, they lay it on, and they want him to keep buying drink after drink for the girl as she gets friendlier and friendlier. And after a while, you buy enough, you can go upstairs, do whatever you want. Or, if you're done, you want to get out of there, then they bring you your bill. Well, if the guy doesn't know he's buying 30 euro glass of champagne after glass of champagne, you can rack up quite a bill. So reading about this online, a lot of people rack up 300, 400, 500 euro bills. And then, of course, they bring you the bill. The guy goes bananas. What are you talking about? And then they bring a menu. They're like, see, those are the prices on the menu. Sure enough, they are. They don't show you a menu. There's no menu in sight. And if the guy's like, I'm not going to pay, then they bring in a sort of bouncer type to intimidate you. Like, yeah, you're going to pay, right? So there's two ways this thing can play off. Thankfully, I smelled a rat immediately and got out immediately. So my bill was like 40 euro. I negotiated down to 30, and off I went. So I got off easy. Why? Granted, it took me a while, but finally when I realized what was going on, I'm like, nope, done, leaving. Not so this boy. So in this story, these two stories, yes, I was dumb, but this boy was dumber. Because look at him. Verse 22. All at once he followed her, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver, like a bird snarling at you, darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. The Bible tells us the wages of sin is death. In ancient Israel, what was the punishment for adultery? It was a capital crime in the laws of the nation, and really pretty much all the ancient world. Right? You commit adultery in the ancient world, odds are you're going to die for it if you get caught. So it's very dangerous, especially back then in that sense. Part 5, final warning, verse 24. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. So again, the adulterous woman in this story, I think, is largely a symbol of sexual sin. Man, woman, whatever. Adultery, whatever other kinds of sexual sin you might consider. And notice, this has destroyed a lot of lives. Destroyed a lot of marriages. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. So in my story, look, let's be honest. If I wanted to cheat on Kehlani with a very attractive woman, man, this is my opportunity. I mean, I'm alone in a foreign city. Like, literally nobody would ever know about this. Like, it was a great opportunity to get away with this. Hey, no consequence. Now, I might have just gotten murdered, you know, if I went down that road. Certainly by Kehlani. But here's the thing, even if nobody else knew, I'd always know. God would always know. That could have been a life-altering decision. That's 3 years ago. If I would have done that, would I have ended up here, get to move to Grand Rapids to be a pastor? Probably not. Unless I lied to everybody about it, and then I've got bigger problems. Right? So notice the danger. Now, thankfully, my heart wasn't after those things. And honestly, this was not at all tempting. I mean, it was just like too awkwardly embarrassing. So this was not even really a threat. But that scares me a little bit on the other hand, because here's the deal. It was super easy to say no to the shady call girl in the weird, sketchy bar. Now, let me just pause a moment and consider the real pain of the story. These girls are surely being trafficked from Russia. So they're essentially slaves in this situation. So that's the other thing. You go down that road, what do you contribute to? What are you doing? I mean, that's really what's going on here. And actually, as she was trying to get me to pay my bill, she was starting to get nervous. Because she gets in trouble if she doesn't bring in a certain amount of money, right? So it's actually a deeply painful thing, as really is anything like that once you scratch beneath the surface. So yeah, for me in that case, it was actually really easy to say no. And again, I think it's pretty easy for you and I to say no to the blatant, in-your-face things. I think the greater threat for us are the more subtle things. Like pornography. Right? It's always with us. It's always on our phones. No one knows. No one's getting hurt. I think most of us know what that's like. Or if it's an actual affair, actual adultery, you know, usually we don't set out to make that decision. Usually it's little things, right? It's a person we know, we kind of attracted to them, start talking to them. Maybe they're married, maybe they're not. Maybe we're single, and person that's always trying to push things too far. So it's the little things that I think are more of a threat to us sometimes than the super blatant things. They'll catch us in the wrong moment, yeah, super blatant things as well. But the good news is, either way, I think here's the key. Look at verse 25. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. So again, I think there's the issue for us. Proverbs 4:23 said, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows out of it. And if we are walking before the Lord and bringing Jesus into every moment of every day and honoring him in our hearts, that's the way out of any of these situations, I think. Yes. Okay. All right. So what's the bottom line here of Dumb and Dumber? Dumb, me, dumber, the guy in the story of the Proverbs. Let's say this. Be realistic about sexual temptation. Be realistic about sexual temptation. Look, this is just part of life. This is one of the devil's favorite game plans against us, all right? And I think one of the things we can do is be a little less hidden and shameful about all this and just talk about it a little freer. I'm pleased to see Proverbs talks about it very freely. I had to do this. Put yourself in my shoes. I had to preach on this topic 3 weeks in a row, basically, right? Well, fair enough. Be realistic about sexual temptation. Let me propose 4 ways. First, by recognizing that temptation can come to you when you least expect it. Right? And again, the boy in the story, me in my story, we're not looking for this stuff. It came to us. And so you might have all the good intentions, but you get blindsided by something. And if you get blindsided by something at the wrong moment, and we have a smart enemy who watches us and studies us so he can find those weak moments, that can be troubling. So we got to put precautions up. We got to watch ourselves. We got to put boundaries in our lives. Second, by remembering that the consequences of sexual sin are severe. Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. Sin brings spiritual death, separation from God. If we're a believer, it brings discipline, God's judgment. It also brings the death to peace, the death to a clean conscience, right? It brings conflict and trouble and turmoil. And whatever that looks like for us, to me, one of the great confirmations that all this God, Bible, Jesus stuff is true is when we go on that path of sin, man, it really is dark. Like there's something existentially grim about it, which speaks to the reality of all this. So let's not forget the consequences here, whether you're married, single, dating. If we take that fire out of the fireplace, like the image we used a few weeks ago, and kindle it on the chair in the living room, we're going to have problems. 3, by fleeing temptation when you realize you're vulnerable. Okay, that's what changed the ending for me in my story versus the guy in Proverbs. Right? Once I realized what was going on, I'm like, nope, getting out of here. Not past go. So again, we need to recognize when we're vulnerable. Part of wisdom is studying our own inclinations, studying our own lives, recognizing where we're weak. It was interesting, I was in a community group type thing, I just thought of this now, I forgot about it. I was in a community group type thing at the seminary I went to, and they had us do this exercise. How many of you read this thing called Screw Tape Letters? Remember this? It's a fictional thing C.S. Lewis wrote. It's a boss demon writing letters to an underling demon, coaching him on how to attack this one Christian. And so they gave us an interesting assignment. They said, exercise in imagination. You sit down and write a letter, pretend you're a demon, okay? Writing to another demon assigned to you, and you give him advice on how to take you out. So we had to write a letter from a demon to another demon, coaching the underling demon on how to get you, me. Very interesting. Creative way of getting us to think, okay, where are those weak places? Where are those vulnerabilities? What are those things that I'm susceptible to? Right? Shady girl in the bar, I'm not susceptible to. Other things, absolutely yes. And it's different for all of us, surely. All right, 4, here's the big one. By keeping your heart and mind firmly fixed upon the Lord. There's the key again. Above all else, guard your heart. Take every thought captive. And if we remain fixed on the Lord and following him, it'll protect us from these sorts of situations. So listen, if you're listening to all that, and you're like, oh my gosh. See, the devil's tricky. If he tempts us, then as soon as we get into it, then he heaps on the shame and the guilt. And both of these pull us away from the Lord. So don't forget 1 John 1:9. We confess our sins. He is faithful and just to forgive our sins and purify us from a little bit of unrighteousness. Is that what it said? What's it say? All unrighteousness, right. So listen, there is an unforgivable sin. It is not adultery or anything like it. Okay? So if this is something that haunts you, bring it to the Lord. Ask his forgiveness, and he promises, if you're a believer in him, to erase that. And that's good news. Because again, our biggest problem is not, well, I digress. Okay, so today we looked at two stories, one in the book of Proverbs, one in the book of Greg. One had a happier ending, thankfully. And we said the big point here, I suggest, be realistic about sexual temptation. It's just part of life. Let's take it seriously, but let's not blow it all out of proportion either. And I think we resist it like we resist all things by guarding our hearts and following the Lord and taking every moment of every day, bring Jesus into it, submit ourselves to Him. So, as luck would have it, the next day, I go down to the Acropolis, and I go into the bathroom by the Acropolis Museum. And in the bathroom, who do I meet? But my friend George. And I didn't want to get murdered by his friends, so I was not at all confrontational. So I was cheerful about it. I was like, hey. I said, that's a pretty good trick you guys played on me yesterday. He says, what do you mean? I said, oh, handing me off to a friend, bring me into that bar and racking up the bill. He's like, how much you pay? I said, 30 euros. He said, that's good. Many paid much more. And then he took this fatherly tone and he's like, you are a nice boy. You shouldn't go to places like that. I'm like, oh, thanks, bro. I appreciate that. And of course, he was right. I went back a year later outside the Acropolis, and who do I see again? Of course, George. He's famous for this. This time I sat back and I watched. Sure enough, he's there with his cane, walking back and forth. The little guy comes along by himself. He walks up, asks him what country he's from, declares that he loves people from that country. This time it was an Asian fellow, and off they went. So, I looked down through the lattice. I saw among the simple. I noticed among the young men a youth who had no sense. He was going down the street near George's corner, walking along in the direction of some delicious moussaka. Let's not do that. Let's you and I be careful and wise. Do not let your heart turn to his ways or stray into his paths. Have a good week.